Thank you, everyone, for joining tonight's webinar on how anxiety can be your friend. I'm Anthony Hartcher. For those that don't know me, I'm a clinical nutritionist and lifestyle medicine specialist. Let me just share a little bit more about me so that you get a better idea of who I am. So, I'm a family man, as you can see from this photo. I have a lovely wife, Adriana. I've got my eldest daughter here, Sophia, and my son, Ollie, in the background. In terms of my qualifications, I've got a degree in clinical nutrition, which is a bachelor of health science, majoring in nutrition and dietetic medicine. I have a degree in complementary medicine and a further degree in chemical engineering. And I've just been awarded as a trained facilitator in the Demartini method. So the Demartini method is what I'm going to be pretty much sharing a lot of tonight. And it's all around how to govern your mind, how to be the master of your mind and not let your mind run you. So this is going to put you back in the driver's seat. And it's hence probably why it was quite attractive to come tonight's webinar, because when you're feeling anxious, you feel out of control, and it's a terrible feeling. When you feel depressed, you're feeling that you don't have the control of your life and the outside world is controlling you. Tonight, I'm going to get that control back into you. And it's simply through you asking better questions. It's a questioning process. It's just asking yourself better questions, and your mind finds the answers, and you'll get a much better, balanced, objective perspective of the world and see it for as it is, and love people for who they are, and love yourself for who you are. And so this is essentially going to transcend your thinking from outside of the primitive thinking to the more transcendent thinking, that higher level thinking. It's that elevated consciousness. So that's where we're going to be taking your mind tonight on the webinar. So I've asked you a little bit about what you'd like to get out of tonight's session. I've certainly got some feedback here. Certainly share any feedback as we go through the webinar as to any questions you have or anything else you'd like to know about what I'm sharing. Or if I'm not quite clear in what I'm sharing, please ask in the chat. I'd like to clarify it. If you're unsure of a concept that I'm sharing and you're not getting it, I'd love you to get it. I don't want you to walk away with any non-clarity about tonight's session. So what is anxiety? So I got this from the anxiety.org. There's many definitions out there. I'm pretty sure you can relate to this definition. So it's essentially anxiety is the mind and body's reaction to a stressful, dangerous, or unfamiliar situation. So we've all experienced that when our body's been under threat, whether it be from a ball coming towards us, or it may be, there's someone running towards you and haven't seen you and you need to step out of the way. Or so it's that situation where you feel threatened or you're endangered, is essentially your body will respond accordingly to that stressful situation and get you out of that situation. So this is what the anxious feeling is. It's very much a survival thinking. It's where activating that survival area of the brain, which is all about being able to get away from a threat, which is considered a predator, and to get your prey, which is what we need. We need to eat to live. And so it's essentially getting you towards prey, away from a predator, is that primitive, that it's not subconscious, but it's the lower level of the brain. So essentially, it is a sense of uneasiness, distress. It's a feeling. You feel just something's not right. You're feeling a bit on edge because you've been triggered by something in the environment. There's something uneasy about this situation. And again, that would be related back to a past memory, a past experience that your brain has etched into the hippocampus, which I'm going to share on this next slide. So essentially, the hippocampus is part of the limbic center. Okay, this limbic center contains the amygdala, the hippocampus, which is the memory component. The amygdala is what triggers the fight, flight, or freeze or fawn response. So it's when essentially it gets the adrenaline going in your body. So it gets your heart pumping. Adrenaline gets your heart pumping. It sends your breathing into shallow breathing. You're breathing lots. You're needing to get oxygen in so that you can get away from that threat quickly or get towards that prey. You don't want to lose that essentially that prey. This is how our mind, our primitive mind, or our, I guess, older mind, so obviously we've developed and evolved in terms of our thinking, and so is our brain, and so we have this higher and lower level of the mind, and so this is the lower part of the brain where all these areas reside here that you can see the arrows going towards. So the hippocampus is part of it, the amygdala is part of it, the basal ganglia. So this is all part of the limbic center, and it's our survival center. It's our fear center. So it's where anxiety resides. It's where anxiety sits. And this forebrain, again, this higher level brain, the telecephalon, is essentially a part of the brain that's evolved over the centuries, over the millenniums, and essentially that brain is where we have strategic vision, we have foresight, we have governance of our mind. We're totally in control. We see the world objectively. We see it for as it is, and we see the balance of both sides. We see that strategic planning thinking. It's essentially, oh yes, I can see that's a benefit in doing this, but there's also a drawback in going this way about it. And so you understand both sides of the decision-making process. Whereas the lower level of the brain is essentially, there's a threat, I need to run the other way. It is really simple thinking. It's one-sided thinking. That's the threat. That's safety. That's where I'll survive, is the other direction. Okay, so it's very quick wiring. So essentially, when you get these triggers from the environment, and it triggers that memory, that past experience where you felt threatened, then straight away that adrenal shot goes straight down the body, straight to the heart, gets it pumping, gets it working, so you can run. You can essentially get away from the threat, or you can fight the threat if it's too close, and you'll fight for your life. Or essentially, if it's prey and you sense that prey getting away and you're not going to have food, you'll run harder and faster in order to get that prey. So it's a survival area part of the brain. There's essentially just, you sense and you react. There's no thinking between sensing, perceiving, and reacting. You just the sensory, you pick up the sensory input and you just react. You're out of there, right? You're not thinking about, oh, if I go, I'll run towards it. You're not thinking like that. Maybe if I run towards it, it might run the other way, but no, you're not thinking like that. It's a straight away immediate reaction. You're going the other way. You're getting away from the threat. To operate the higher level part of the brain, we need to start looking for what we're missing, essentially. So in these moments today, particularly in today's world, where we're not walking down the street and seeing a tiger, right? It's not like that. It's not like when we were going foraging in the bushes and then all of a sudden the tiger would pop out right in front of us and we think, oh no. We don't have that today. We live a very different life. We're certainly that very modern, very advanced world where we don't have these, not surrounded by tigers, and we're surrounded by an abundance of food. We don't have a shortage of food. We've got too much food, and so we don't have these prehistoric threats that we used to have. Some parts of the world are still looking for, and needing food, and that they're very much in this survival part of the brain. Certainly where we reside, in a more developed part of the world and with quite affluence, we don't have these more primitive prehistoric threats. Our threats are things that we're perceiving, but we're perceiving an imbalance. We're perceiving one-sided of that person. We're perceiving that person as just, they're arrogant, they're rude, they're narcissistic. Okay, we're judging. The moment we judge, we go straight into this animal part of the brain, this fear center, the moment we form any judgment. Because essentially, again, we're getting back down to that lower level thinking, which is one-sided. The threat is there. I need to get out and get away from it. I need just to run that other way. I don't need anything else. I don't need my executive function to work that out. It's quite simple. Get out of there. And so, whenever we judge a situation or judge an event in the world, this is what is stored in this survival mechanism because we're judging it as bad. And so when you perceive something from the media in terms of reading an article and it's all bad, that is, again, that can trigger your limbic center because you're just only taking in consciously all the bad about it. There's not the other side is presented. And generally, you find out more about the other side over time as other things, other information is shared. But immediately, it's just all bad is in terms of what's shared. There's no, the media is sharing both sides of what's happened in terms of the benefits of what's happened, the beneficiaries of what's happened. It's all about victim mentality. And again, it's to get you fearing and really needing to go to that source for more information because they're controlling you. You're essentially under their control because they're driving that fear center and you're relying on them to keep giving you information in order to work out what you're going to do, how you're going to respond to it. And essentially, they do it with their branding. And then you believe that, you're going to get news, up-to-date news with this particular brand, and it gets you associated with their brand because they're driving your emotional center. And the emotional centers are connected to the hippocampus. And whenever we judge something, we put a charge on it. So it's a negative charge. It gets stored in the hippocampus as an association with something negative. And so as we go through life and we experience life and we are judging things, we are storing these memories in our hippocampus as negative. And then as we walk down the street, we essentially then perceive a similar smell to that boyfriend that broke up with you, that dumped you. You smell that, and all of a sudden you're triggered. You think, I'm feeling a bit anxious. And you're thinking, why am I a bit anxious? I've just smelt something. But then what's happened is that your mind's bringing up that past event where you had that boyfriend who was wearing that deodorant when he dumped you. And essentially, you're triggered today because you have an imbalanced perspective of what happened back then. You haven't looked at the other side of being dumped. So again, if we ask the questions, we can bring out the other side. And this is what I'm going to share tonight is when something happens, and if you feel emotional about what's happened, you've got to ask yourself, what am I missing? What's missing? How am I going to balance my perspective? If you start asking the question in order to start to look for the other side in terms of what's happened, if you're perceiving it as all bad, you want to be asking the question, what's good about it? What is good about it? And the answer is there. You'll find the answer. So let me get into how you ask better questions in order to improve the quality of your life, in order to elevate your thinking. So I've shared bits and pieces about this, but essentially the amygdala is in our lower part of the brain. Our prefrontal cortex is in the elevated, the prefrontal. So it's the forebrain, essentially, the higher level brain. The amygdala is more the hindbrain, hence the sort of the hindsight. It keeps us drawn to the past or living in the past. Essentially, the prefrontal cortex will give us visions, and this really helps with overcoming. So essentially, when you're depressed, you're in that survival part of the brain. You're only seeing a one-sided world, essentially. You're not seeing the other side. And essentially, through asking better questions, the other side will start to reveal itself, and you'll start to see the world for as it is, as opposed to the fantasy you're imposing on the world. So I'm going to talk a bit more about that as we go through these slides. What I'm sharing here is essentially When you're anxious or depressed, again, you're in that fear center, you're in the desire center. And again, this desire center will then drive you towards things that where you seek immediate gratification. So it will drive you towards areas that you perceive as being pleasurable, such as certain foods are extremely pleasurable, such as ice cream, fat and sugar. Anything fat and sugar is extremely palatable. And when you're feeling it, or when you're experiencing in this fear center, also the desire center, you are then seeking immediate gratification in order to fulfill yourself, in order to fill what is missing. And again, what is missing is a perception of what's missing. But in reality, in actuality, there's nothing missing. So you've probably had a good chance to read this slide, but that amygdala is that fight, fright, or freeze. It's the lower part of the brain. It's the survival part of the brain. It's where we make irrational decisions. Okay, we're not rationalizing the situation. We just made one decision, and that is to get away from the threat or to go harder to get the prey. Again, it's the all or nothing thinking. It's that I've got to get away from that predator in order to survive. All or nothing thinking. I've got to get that prey in order to survive. It's the pain or pleasure system center. It's essentially that's going to be extremely painful if the predator gets me. It's going to be extremely pleasurable if I get the prey. Again, it's one-sided thinking, all or nothing thinking. The prefrontal cortex, on the other hand, is our executive center. It is where we've got higher level thinking, we've got strategic vision, we can rationally make decisions, we can rationally think through the logic as to what's the best path forward, weighing up both sides. Okay, everything's got two sides. When you're in the higher level of the brain, you're able to see both sides. So again, you've got greater vision, you've got more objective thinking, as opposed to the amygdala, which is very subjective thinking, one-sided thinking. You've got great problem solving, great creative ability when we're in the forefront of the brain. In the amygdala, we don't have creativity because it's a one-sided world. We can only see one side of everything, right? We don't see a balanced perspective. We're not using a greater, as we move up the brain, as we move up our thinking, there's more neural circuitry, there's more neural pathways. And essentially, the answer, you'll find the answer through connecting with, by essentially taking the blood and glucose and the blood oxygen up to this higher level of the brain, activating these extra neural pathways as opposed to these very one-sided neural pathways that are in the amygdala. And so at that higher level thinking, we can see the world for as it is. We can be grateful for what's happened because we can see the order in what's happened. In the amygdala, it all appears chaotic. It appears disordered. It appears that something is missing. There's a void. However, in the prefrontal cortex, we see both sides. There's nothing missing. We see the hidden order. We can therefore be grateful for what's happened because we see it as it is, not as something we're imposing on the way it should have been because we've only got one-sided thinking. When we've got objective thinking, we see it for as it is. We see the person for who they are, and we can love them for who they are because we're honoring both sides of that person. We're not saying, I'll only love you if you do these things and behave in this one-sided way. We're actually embracing both sides of that person. We're opening up the heart, putting that person in our heart, and we can truly love them. True love is unconditional and it's higher level. It's higher level thinking. The animalistic thinking is that pain, pleasure. It's pleasure. I just need that woman because I want sex, or I just need that man because I want sex. Again, that's primitive thinking. It's survival. It's just all about reproductive, and as opposed to the higher level thinking, which is about having a strategic vision for your family, being together, being able to plan and see both sides, the positives, the pros, the cons, of the decisions you're making as a family unit. Again, creating a family is all about delayed gratification. As you're raising children, children are pretty, they don't really express a lot of gratitude, right, or thankfulness in the early years, and even in the teenage years, there's not a lot. But as they become adults and they realize how tough parenting is when they're parents themselves, that's when they appreciate their parents more. So the hard work the parents are putting in those early years is really comes back, and they get rewarded in those later years. And again, so building a family is delayed gratification. Having sex is immediate gratification. And so they're different. One's all about procreation, and that's all it is. It's just having a family, and being able to build a family, and have a vision for where you want your family to be, and how you want to communicate as a family, and how you want to grow and thrive together as a family is different. It is higher level thinking. And again, unconditional love can only be in the higher level part of the brain, because it's two sides. Unconditional love means you're loving the person for who they are. You love both sides of that person. So I'll share an example here in terms of emotional eating and how our amygdala is operated, and then the roller coaster in terms of how just something that you perceive as initially nice turns into guilt, shame, and then you want more to actually fulfill that void, that where you're feeling guilty and shameful, and you're feeling emptiness. So then you want to have more of that something that you're perceiving as a guilty pleasure, or something naughty. And this is the problem with labeling food. Okay, when we judge food, we send our blood glucose and our oxygen to the lower part of the brain, and we have a one-sided perspective. And with food is what it is. It has both sides. Everything has both sides. For example, a lolly isn't all bad. A lolly has kilojoules. It has calories. We need kilojoules and calories to survive. And in certain situations, it can be a lifesaver. So if someone's blood glucose drops really low, they faint, the first aid thing is to get some sugary water, or to get a lolly if they're still conscious, and for that person to suck on the lolly. So it can save someone. Yet we label it as bad. Lollies are not all bad. Again, we shouldn't be labeling food. Labeling food is just getting us into this desire center, and we essentially go on this seesaw, which I'm sharing here, this emotional seesaw. Okay, so I've just had a question in terms of what happens when we're really hungry. Okay, so that's a really good question. And so, yes, we do have a desire to eat. We need food in order to eat, but it's what's triggering that desire is the question I ask. So have you been triggered by someone and you're feeling guilty, or you're feeling an extreme, like just extreme emotion? So you're feeling extremely joyful and celebratory. And so that all positive can stimulate that a parasympathetic response, where you're actually thinking, oh, I could do with some celebration food, right? I could go out and celebrate, and essentially what I've achieved has given me the license to eat whatever, right? And then you go and pig out, and essentially then you'll realize afterwards that you've gone to excess, okay? And then you're feeling all the symptoms of excess. You're feeling bloated, you're feeling lethargic, tired, you're feeling stuffed, you're feeling essentially like you're burping and it just won't digest. It's just sitting there. And again, it is because you were triggered externally, and that trigger externally has led to a void, and essentially you're looking to fill that void, or you've had too much of you've such a pleasurable sensation, it's relaxed your body so much, it's then saying, oh, I'm feeling hungry. And because the digestion system's finally been turned on, and then you go and pig out, and essentially because you're in that one-sided thinking, you're then thinking, I deserve it, right? And so then you're thinking, I deserve to eat and pig out. And so you get self-righteous, and that self-righteous then drives this you just got this massive appetite to this want to consume. And then essentially then you seesaw back to the other side. You start to feel guilty about what you've just done, and you start thinking of the consequences of what is just being done. And again, it results in this seesaw. So to answer your question, Sharmini, in terms of absolutely, if hunger's driven from within and hasn't been externally triggered, then that's a good thing. If we're in touch with our body, what happens too much today is that we're triggered from the external environment. It's driving us to that one-sided thinking, that animal thinking. We are feeling unfulfilled. We feel there's a void because we can only see one side. There's something missing. And in order to fulfill that void, we look externally again for fulfillment. However, if we're driven from within and we're in touch with our body, then that's when we're totally attuned to what our body needs, and we fulfill those needs appropriately. Okay. So it's essentially, what is driving the hunger? Have you been externally driven? Has a sign made you hungry, or has a particular smell made you hungry? Or without those triggers, have you felt a signal from within to say, I'm feeling like I could do with some food. I'm feeling that my energy levels are dropping in terms of, I'm sensing, yeah, I'm feeling a bit weak. I might be a bit lightheaded, or essentially my tummy's grumbling. You are actually picking up internal feelings from within that haven't been externally triggered by someone walking past with a big burger that looks amazing, or a big ice cream. So it depends as to whether it's been externally triggered. If it's been externally triggered and you judge, you're judging it, you're thinking, oh, that burger looks all good. It's just all good. Again, your blood glucose goes to that amygdala, that desire center. I want that prey. Give me more of that prey. And essentially, then you associate having that prey with feeling good. It releases that dopamine, that serotonin. Yeah, so it really depends, Sharmini, in terms of what's driven your hunger signals. So if it's driven externally from someone's angered you or made you feel frustrated, or you're feeling frustrated with the task you're working on, and it's, you're procrastinating, it's something that you just don't like doing, it's one of those subjects that or if you're studying, it's one of those subjects you don't like, or it could be a particular task at work that you just don't like doing. It doesn't turn you on at all. It's very unfulfilling. And so that unfulfillment will essentially take you into that more survival area part of the brain, because you feel there's a void, there's something missing, it's a threat to your survival. And when that part of the brain's activated, it activates the desire center. And again, we look for immediate gratification. How can I fulfill that void that I'm feeling from doing that boring task at work? I'll fill that void with something immediately gratifying, that pleasurable thing, such as I'm going to go to the pantry and grab a chocolate biscuit. And so this will take us on the emotional seesawing roller coaster. So initially we think, yeah, I'll go and have that chocolate biscuit because I'm feeling bored. I'm sick of this task. It's going to lift my dopamine, make me feel better. And yes, it does temporarily. Again, immediate gratification. It's a temporarily fix because you have this imbalanced perspective, and you initially feel happy. But then after having the chocolate biscuit, the guilt kicks in and then it sends you to the other side and you start feeling sad. You're thinking, oh, I feel a bit guilty for having 5 biscuits. I only really wanted to have one. I've ended up eating 5. That's extra calories that I didn't want. Now that's going to turn into fat. And you start thinking of the opposite side. You start thinking of the other side. So you didn't see it initially. Initially, it just looked all good. That chocolate biscuit looked fantastic. It was just going to taste delicious and make you feel better and give you a dopamine hit. Then in afterwards, after you've had it, you then see the other side of having the chocolate biscuit. And so then you start to feel guilty and you start feeling low self-esteem. Again, it drives another bit of you're feeling unfulfilled. You feel low self-worth. You're thinking, I always overeat, or I'm always eating the wrong foods. Again, you're judging yourself. You're in that animal part of the brain. And you feel there's a void. And essentially, then you go back and think, I feel crap again. I'm going to go for that dopamine hit and I'm going to have another chocolate biscuit. I still, after that one chocolate biscuit, still feeling shit because I just feel low. And then you'll have another one, another one, another one. And then all of a sudden, you start thinking, I've just stuffed myself. I'm totally stuffed. I feel sick. I've eaten so much. I feel absolutely sick. And again, it swings you back to the other side. And then you feel empty again. And then you're looking for something else to give you some immediate gratification. So what will you do? You'll go back to your computer. Rather than just finish that task that you don't want to work on, you'll then go to a browser. You'll look up shopping. You'll go, I feel like a pair of shoes. Okay, that pair of shoes is going to give me fulfillment in that moment. I'm going to get a dopamine hit from purchasing a box of shoes that I've been thinking about. And so you go and buy the box of shoes. And then again, you're buying these box of shoes, and then you buy them on the credit card. And then at the end of the month, the credit card bill comes and you're thinking, oh, it's looking like I'm going to struggle to meet the balance of payment or to pay off the credit card. And you're thinking, well, I didn't really need those. Oh, why did I buy those, shoes? And again, you start to feel the pain afterwards. You start to see the other side in time, over time. The other side will be revealed for you. But the other side was sitting there. If you had just asked a better question of yourself, you would have elevated your thinking, got out of the animal thinking, and made a more executive decision, a decision of where you're in control. You're in the driver's seat of your mind. The mind's not being run by external fulfillment. Your mind's being run from within. Okay, and so we can ask ourselves the better question at the time. We can ask ourselves, okay, why am I feeling a bit down? Why am I not, why am I feeling a bit empty? What's caused that emptiness? Okay, it's that task at work. I can't, I just don't want to tackle that task. Why is it? Why is that task? Why are you perceiving it as unfulfilling? Why do you perceive it as all bad? Then you want to ask yourself, what's the benefits to me doing that task? How will it fulfill what's important to me? Okay, you could be having you might have a family and your family is very important to you. Doing that task is may bring you a bonus that you can then, come back and give your family. Like, again, it's asking, what is the benefits? Because you're only seeing the downside of doing that task. What is the benefits of me doing that task and in what's important in my life? And if you can start linking the benefits of doing that task to how it's going to fulfill what's important in your life, then that task will no longer, you'll no longer judge that task. You'll no longer see it as just boring, unfulfilling. You will see how it serves you and what's important to you. Because you've looked at the other side, you've asked yourself the question, I'm feeling like I'm procrastinating. I feel like I'm hesitating. I'm going externally and looking for immediate gratification. I'm going to ask myself a better question in order to balance my perception of that task. I'm going to ask myself the other side of what I'm missing. I am perceiving the task is just all negative. It just has all drawbacks. I'm not looking for what benefits that task brings me. It could, again, it might be a task that's helping you mentally. It might be mentally challenging. It might be a problem that you're thinking, I'm going to tackle this problem because it's going to bring me more resilience, more, it's going to bring me essentially an ability to then be able to take on greater challenging tasks because I am shifting my mind as to the benefit of doing it is that it's going to challenge me, but now I'm going to call upon some support. I'm going to bring a team around me. We're going to tackle the problem together. Again, it's about looking at the other side. What are you missing at that time of which you're judging something and feeling an emotion? Once we judge something, we assign a positive or negative to it. Then that's a charge that then initiates an emotional response, either good or, either pleasurable emotional response or a negative emotional response. And so this emotional seesaw, you've probably all had this experience. Essentially, you're, yeah, I've probably spoken a lot about this. I hope it's helped you, Shamini, in terms of understanding to ask the question, am I externally stimulated by eating or am I intrinsically and again, that external may send intrinsic cues as to yes, you're hungry, and it's working out what was the initial driver and whether you're actually hungry. And sometimes it can be if you're emotional and you're feeling unfulfilled. It's just ask yourself the question: what am I missing? What's the other side? What am I not seeing? Excellent, Sharmini. Thank you for letting me know so I don't keep going on. But essentially, it is. It's asking yourself or realizing firstly you have an imbalanced perspective because there's an emotional charge to whatever you've perceived. And then asking yourself, what am I not seeing? So if I'm seeing it as all positive, what am I not seeing? What are the drawbacks? So that hamburger is just all positive. It's going to make me feel better. It's going to lift my spirits and all this. What are you not seeing? What are the drawbacks of having that hamburger? One of the drawbacks could be, do you really need those excess calories? One of the drawbacks could be that it's essentially you're actually not that hungry, and by eating that whole hamburger, you're going to feel full, stuffed, and then tired, and it's going to stop you from being so productive at work afterwards. You're going to feel like asleep. And again, if you start to balance a perspective, that emotional charge dissipates. And again, you won't be driven to wanting excess. You won't be driven to immediate gratification. You'll feel fulfilled from within because you've seen both sides and you can make a strategic decision. Is that the best decision for where I want to be, for where I'm going, or where I want to be headed? So if you have a health goal of improving your fitness, then that hamburger is not taking you on the path towards improving your fitness or improving, to support you achieving your ideal weight, whatever it may be. Okay. So in terms of how do we lift ourselves out of this animal thinking? So we've got the emotional charge. We realize we've got an imbalanced perspective. We've realized we've judged something. What do we do? So whenever you get one of these anxious signals or this feeling of anxiousness, again, what is it? What emotional charge is it? What's triggered it? Why are you triggered? and then start looking at it and asking yourself the question to reveal the other side. So essentially, there's only three things that we can control in life. Okay, we can control the way we perceive things. Okay, so we can balance our perceptions, and that's what I've been talking about. Again, if we just take it for as it is and just take it as a one-sided all or nothing, then you're going to be residing, or your thinking's going to be in terms of that primitive thinking, which is just reacting, right? You're just going to react. You're not even going to think before having that hamburger. You're just going to have that hamburger. And then you'll think afterwards, and then that's when you're going to start seeing the other side, or the side you didn't see before having the hamburger. So we can intercept that at the moment of which we think, oh, that hamburger looks good. I feel like one of them. Then you want to be asking yourself, what are the drawbacks in terms of what I value? And it could be a drawback in terms of your health goals, a drawback in terms of your family goals. Like, I want to be a good role model for my younger children. Is eating a hamburger being a good role model? Again, is it taking me towards and supporting my values and what's important to me, or is it taking me away from what's important to me? And once you start asking the questions, you'll start to dissipate that emotional charge, and you won't see it as all good. You'll start to see it as balance. You'll see it as it is, and then you'll be able to make a decision based on having an objective thinking process. So essentially, we can balance our perceptions. We can then make thoughtful decision making, which then drives strategic action, action that takes us towards our goals as opposed to away from them. So I've shared a fair bit in terms of what's showing on this slide. But this first point, in terms of our perceptions, you've probably experienced this in your life, some point in your life where you've experienced the same event, but taken away a totally different perspective of that event. So two people can observe the same event, but have totally two different perceptions of that event. And so in order to get in control of what we're perceiving, we need to ask better questions. If we want to be driven by our emotions, and that's driven by just external cues, and let our emotions make our decision making and make our actions, then essentially that is when we're being run by our animal part of the brain. If you want to be a leader and have foresight and be able to go towards what you want to achieve in life and make a difference in this world, then one thing that I want to make sure you walk away with tonight is that your quality of your life will be determined by the quality of the questions you ask yourself. If you ask better questions, it improves the quality of your life. So again, we can balance our perceptions in order to make better decisions and take better action. And so when we balance our perceptions, we can see gratitude for what happened. We can be grateful for what happened because we see it for as it is. We don't perceive it as just a one-sided event. We see both sides. We see the balance in what's happened. We see how it has served us. If we perceived it as initially as negative, we then look for the other side as to how that event is serving me. Then you start to see the order in what happened, and therefore you can be thankful for what happened. And it's the same as with people. If we perceive something that person's doing is frustrating or irritating us, again, we have an imbalanced perception. We're just judging that person for one-sidedness. We're just seeing a one-sided perspective of that person. Essentially, what we're doing is projecting something that we're disowning in ourselves on them. And so essentially, the question you want to ask yourself, if someone else is frustrating you or irritating you, or you just don't want to be around because you don't like what they do, ask yourself, when have you done what they have done? And if you look in your life, you'll start to realize that you have done that. You're just disowning it, and you're too proud to admit that that is part of you as well. And so when you can actually balance that perception of what you're disliking on in them, and see how it's of benefit in doing, or at them doing what they did to you, and seeing how it served you, and seeing when you did it, then you're putting it essentially in objective perspective. You're seeing the balance in what's happened. You can be grateful for what they did. You can love them for who they are, and you'll have greater love for yourself because you're starting to see yourself as a whole person as opposed to just a one-sided person. And essentially, there's a part of you that you want to get rid of, that you're disowning, and that's the side that you're projecting onto them. So by looking at when you've done what they've done to you in your life, and going to that moment and actually saying, yes, I've done exactly that, and I did it to this person. And then you're thinking, oh no, they still do it more than me. Then I want you to then say, well, that's still an imbalanced perspective because you haven't balanced it. If you're thinking they do it way more than you, then you've got to keep finding examples in your life when you've done it till it's completely balanced, until you feel a no emotional charge towards that person. It's completely balanced. You can just own it. You can say, yes, I do what they did to me just as much, to the same quality, to the same quantity. And I'm certain that I do it just as much as them. And therefore, that what that does is essentially open up your heart. You can then put that person in your heart, and you can love them for who you are. And you've loved another part of you that you've been disowning and not loving. And so this is so critical in terms of being able to love yourself better, because again, what we don't like in other people is just a projection of what we're disowning in us. Okay. So if you're going around and you're seeing a similar action that people are doing that you are judging them for doing, then that's something that you're not honoring that you do. You're too proud to admit that you do it. And that pride is getting in the way of you being you. It's getting in the way of you being an authentic version, or the best version of you. So, again, ask better questions if you are feeling an emotion in terms of an event that you've observed, or in terms of an emotion from a person that they've done something and they're just nasty. They're just narcissistic. And so what you want to then, what is it that they specifically did that you're now judging and labeling as narcissistic or nasty or mean? What is it specifically they did? And then think, when have I done that? And you go into, you'll find it. You're absolutely, there's two sides of you, there's two sides of them. And the only reason you're annoyed about them is it's because it's essentially you projecting something that you're not owning in yourself, and you're not loving the true self, or the full version of you. And once you can see that they have both sides, you have both sides, you can open your heart to them, and put them in your heart and love them for who they are, without labeling them, without putting any condition around love. And also you can love what they, or you can be grateful for what they did, because it's now given you an opportunity to love a part of you that you're disowning. Okay, so I've just shared, this is part of the step of being fully authentic, is when you can actually, when you love the whole of you, then you love everyone around you, because you're not projecting anything you're disowning in you onto them. And essentially, you can see and see that they have both sides. You know that you have both sides, and you can just love them unconditionally and love them for who they are, as opposed to projecting onto them how they should be living or what they should be doing. So what really helps lift our mind in terms of taking it into the higher level thinking is not only balancing our judgment, but also living by what's important to us. Okay. So when we're living a life of doing things that are important to us, not imposed on us, not where people say that you should be doing this or you ought to be doing this, and you think to yourself, oh, I got to do this, I need to do this. Again, that's you injecting other people's values, or injecting what other people what's important to other people onto you. Okay. So essentially, what you want to do is start understanding what's truly important to you. And your life represents what's truly important to you, because you do it without thinking, without anyone asking you. So, what do you do when you get up each day that no one has to ask you to do? You just do it every day with no reminder, no incentive. It's just driven from within. For example, no one has to ask me to go out and exercise every day. Health is of high value to me. And so I don't need to be reminded. No one needs to pay me. No one needs to encourage me. I don't need to seek external motivation to exercise, because health is of high value to me. No one needs to tell me what to eat or how much, because I value my health. I I then make sure that I'm doing things that support my health and well-being. Again, I don't impose this value of health onto other people. Like today or tonight, I'm just sharing information. I'm just passing on wisdom that I've learned that will help you in your life. I'm not expecting anything in return. Essentially, I'm just sharing my knowledge. And if this is of benefit for you, then you might like in terms of what I've got to offer. But I'm not saying that you need to, you have to, you ought to, you got to buy my services or products. I'm not saying that. I'm sharing my wisdom and knowledge. And if it resonates with you, then you might be interested in learning more about what I do and what else I share in terms of information. Or you might be not in any need or hurry to go down the path in terms of the services I offer, but at least I've shared something with you. And then when maybe at some point you might know a friend that but you may think that could benefit from my services, and you may refer that person to me. Again, it's really, I'm doing this tonight because I'm inspired to share health knowledge, because one of my my top three values are my health, your health, and my family. Okay. So I'm doing everything every day inspired from within to fulfill those highest values. However, if someone says, look, come to a car show, and for example, I'm not interested in cars. And so if I go there, I'm doing something that's of low priority to me, I'm going to feel a level of unfulfillment. When I'm doing this, I feel totally fulfilled. I don't need to eat. I don't feel like I need to drink. I don't feel like I need to sleep. I, I'm totally fulfilled in this moment, sharing my knowledge with you. And so I'm doing something that's of really high value to me. However, if this was of low value to me, I would be just looking at the time thinking, like I just want to finish this. I just want to go and watch a show, watch my favorite Netflix. I'm not looking forward to my next thing. I'm totally immersed in doing this and imparting my knowledge with you. And so this is what inspires me from within. I don't need any external motivation. You haven't given me any money tonight or anything else. I'm not driven by that external motivation. I'm driven from within to share my knowledge with you, to help you on your journey. I'm driven from within to fulfill my health, and I'm driven from within to support my family. So they're my three highest values. So what I want you to think about, what fills you with energy? What is it that you do that you think sleep is so inconvenient? What is it that you like waking up to and you just can't wait to do? What is it that inspires you? Where are you most inspired? What activities just bring you unlimited energy? So I have, like, even though it's, what is it, time is it? It's now 20 minutes to 9 o'clock. I've still got loads of energy. I've still got so much more to share. I haven't even realized, I didn't realize that it was so late actually. So you've done really well to spend over an hour with me. Yeah, so essentially I've lost track of time. And so when is it that you lose track of time? When is it that time just seems to just disappear? You're doing something totally fulfilling. When you're doing something of low priority, you're just constantly looking at the time, and the time feels that it just is so painfully slow. Whereas when you're doing something you love, the time just disappears and you think, oh, where did all that time go? And so Shamini's sharing in terms of when she reads, okay? So when she reads, she can just keep reading, and she just gets so immersed into this book that essentially time just disappears. And then she's looking at the time and it's like 2 a.m. in the morning. She's thinking, oh, geez, I better go to bed. And um, so yeah, thank you, Irene. I really appreciate that. Um, and so essentially, what is it that you love talking about? Where is it that you spend your money beyond the bare necessities? So obviously beyond shelter, food, water, clothing, beyond those bare necessities to get by, where are you spending your money? So I spend my money in, for example, like equipment that helps me share information, such as I've got a headset here, I've got my microphone here, I pay for Zoom, so that's where I'm spending my money, because I've also, I pay for a medium to host my podcast, and so I'm investing in my podcast, but that allows me to share my information far and broad, and that's my mission, to enhance and enlighten the well-being of others. And if I spend my money in these areas, it's helping me fulfill my mission. I can see how that money is going towards a greater cause, and that's fulfilling my grander vision, and that's helping other people become more fulfilled, more inspired, and the best versions of themselves. And so, where are you most reliable and disciplined? So, where do you turn up on time? You're always there on time or ahead of time. Where are you, like, what are you doing where you're never late? You're just like, for example, if I'm going to an exercise class, I'm there 15 minutes early. I'm never late to my exercise classes. However, if you ask me to meet you at the pub, I'd probably be quite late to meeting you at the pub, because it's not a place that I like hanging out. It's not an ambience or an environment that I like being in. And so I will procrastinate, hesitate, and frustrate about going to the pub. And so, Shamini, you mentioned work. So, is that where you're inspired, or is that where you're not inspired? It's of low priority, or it's where you're very inspired from within? I think it's from where I think from the context which I'm sharing, you're very inspired with your work, which is fantastic. And that's what ultimately everyone should, again, should, I'm saying that you should, again, um, but it like, okay, so Shamini's saying it's where she turns up on time. Absolutely. So again, for Shamini, she's probably linked work to her highest values. Is she's thought about how work is fulfilling her highest values, and so therefore it's very important for her to be there on time, to do the best she can at work, because she sees the link towards her fulfillment towards her highest values. And again, if you're doing something, a task that you don't like doing, what you want to ask is, how is doing this task serving me fulfill my highest values? And again, you're asking yourself a better question. And when you ask yourself that question, your brain finds the answer, your intuition finds the answer. It reveals the other side that you don't initially perceive. Again, because again, you're in that animal center, you're just seeing one sided. You ask yourself a better question, see the other side, you elevate your thinking, you start to activate more neural pathways, and you're starting to activate these neural pathways towards things that inspire you, such as they're of high value to you. You got lots of linkages, so therefore you pull yourself out of the animal part of the brain. Work is therefore linked to things that you extremely value, and then you wake up every morning, you can't wait to go to work. And as Warren Buffett says, he taps dance to work. You want to be doing something that you tap dance to work. You are so inspired from within to go and fulfill what you're about to do, because it fulfills of what's highest value to you. And you probably get a sense that I'm very inspired by this work in terms of my tone of my voice, in terms of the amount of time I'm willing to spend with you at this late hour, because it's totally fulfilling for me. Meeting you and your needs is fulfilling for me. Empowering you, inspiring you, helping you from finding inspiration from within is very fulfilling for me. And so essentially, when people are asking you to do things that you don't value, then absolutely let them know that it's like, be open and honest, it's saying, okay, that's something you get very fulfilled in, but it's unfulfilling for me, and be open and honest about it. Or just let them know that by you doing what you would rather do is helping them fulfill their highest values. So if you understand that person, then if you communicate to them based on their highest values, and they can see the link to what you're going to do instead of hanging out with them, and how it helps them fulfill their highest values, then they won't mind you saying no. They're going to say, please go and do that, because it helps fulfill their highest values. Whereas, again, if you could just say no, no, thank you, and just go and do what inspires you. And then when you're inspired from within, you're not looking for any immediate gratification, You're happy with delayed gratification. And so, again, another area that will take you down to your animal part of your brain is when you're comparing yourself to others. And again, people will do what's most important to them. And so if you see someone with a magnificent physique, that amazing physique, and you're thinking, oh, I wish I had that physique. The thing is, what you're doing is then comparing you to what's highest value to them, and that's not fulfilling for you. So if you went on the pursuit of what they did in order to get that physique, you'll be feeling unfulfilled, because you're going away from who you truly are, through the magnificence of you as to why you were placed on this earth. You're going away from that magnificent you into trying to be someone else. And that's going to be unfulfilling. And hence you'll procrastinate, and you'll hesitate and frustrate about doing the task that you need to do in order to get that physique. Whereas you're spontaneously doing what's fulfilling to you every day, and your life demonstrates to you what's fulfilling, what you value most. It's all around you. It's within close proximity. It's where you spend your time. It's, again, you do it without any motivation, and you do it, and you don't procrastinate. So the things of high value, you never procrastinate. You're just motivated from within, inspired from within to do it. And so that's you being the true you. And the only time when like the times when you compare yourself to others, you're putting their values above your values and then lowering your self-worth, minimizing you, depreciating yourself, idolizing them. However, we're all equal. We all are humans, and we do what fulfills us. That's how we're driven. That's essentially how humans evolve, is by being the best versions of who we are, is how the human race evolves and thrives. However, if we try to copy and imitate other people, we feel unfulfilled. That's where we get depressed. Like, essentially, depression is comparing where you are with a fantasy of where you expect, in terms of the way other people should behave, the way the world should be. If you have any of these fantasies, what you want to start looking at is, what are the drawbacks of that fantasy that I'm holding on to? What are the drawbacks of that fantasy? And you'll start to see the other side, because a fantasy we only see as all positive. It's a fairy tale. When we start to ask ourselves the balancing and start to bring it down, that fantasy, into actuality, then we feel fine, because we are being ourselves as opposed to comparing our lives to a fantasy. And so Buddha says, if you seek something of that's unattainable, such as a fantasy, that drives unfulfillment, that drives a void, and that is foolish. Buddha says that's foolish. That if you seek something that's unattainable, or if you try to avoid something that's unavoidable. So that's essentially, we're running towards fantasies and running away from nightmares. That's essentially us in our animal center. It's a one-sided world. So in order to have gratitude for the world as it is, and to be able to love one another, we need to get into our higher level thinking and seeing the world for as it is, seeing people for as they are, as opposed to judging them and judging the world and events and labeling them. And essentially, that is our animal part of the brain. That's where we don't thrive. That's where we shrink. That's where we actually shrink. If we want to shine, we need to live by our values and continue to live by our values. And the only comparison we ever do is how we're comparing to living out our values. What are you doing each day to fulfill your highest values? So if you don't fulfill your day with tasks that inspire you, it will fill with tasks that uninspire you, that tasks that frustrate you, the tasks that procrastinate, because it will fill up with other people's to-do lists. Other people will delegate their crap to you. And if you don't have anything, you just think, oh, well, if, maybe I should do that. And you feel unfulfilled doing that. But if you fill your day with tasks that inspire you, and if people then try to impose a task onto you that that's a low priority, you can say, look, I'm totally full. I've got no space in my day for that activity. I'm totally booked. And again, so fill your day with tasks that inspire you. You'll be fulfilled within. You don't need immediate gratification. You don't activate your desire center. You're not seeking pleasure. You're not seeking, again, things that, like things that fulfill you initially short term, but then you feel unfulfilled afterwards, such as junk food, such as alcohol, such as drugs, gambling. All these things are just ways in which we seek this immediate gratification. We seek immediate pleasure. And it's because we're doing things that are unfulfilling. We're doing things that are low priority. So get doing things of high priority and delegate lower priority things to other people that like doing that. For example, I delegate my IT problems to other people. I delegate it to people who love solving IT problems. I love solving health problems. So anyone comes to me with a health problem, I'm inspired to take that challenge on and to find a resolution to that challenge. That's where I'm most inspired, and that's where I'm most fulfilled. But me tackling an IT challenge takes me down to my animalistic part of the brain where I get frustrated. I get angry. I get annoyed. um, yeah, so Shamini's asking about antidepressants. They are drugs, but medicine at the same time. And so, yeah, so drugs can, well, essentially what drugs do is one way of controlling your chemistry. And so it's an external way of balancing your chemistry. So it can, and again, because it takes over and actually takes charge, and it's driven by the drug. Essentially, what our body does, again, it's hard finding the right ratios of the amount of dose that you need to take in order to get that balance, and you can overdo it, underdo it, and need more or need less. And again, we're looking for an external fix as opposed to looking for an internal resolution. And again, we can do it if we're willing to do the work, if we're willing to um, be accountable, be accountable for our lives and not be run by the outside world. However, if some people don't want that, some people just are happy to look externally to resolve their problems, like in terms of drugs, that, I'll go get drugs, they'll fix me. I'll go and get some surgery that will fix me. Again, if you're wanting to take ownership of your life and be accountable and live a very fulfilling life, then change is enabled from within. Uh, Again, it's just the mindset. So if you want to do it from within, again, the body's got self-healing abilities. It doesn't need drugs to heal itself. So it just depends on whether you're willing to do the work that I'm sharing tonight, or if this is too much, then yes, by all means, drugs, they serve a purpose in this world. Absolutely. For anyone who doesn't want to take accountability and wants to blame others and wants to judge and whatnot and be run by an external world, then drugs are perfect for them because they get external support through that drug. The drug does its job. Again, the downside of taking a drug is there's always side effects. Okay, so the person will then have to put up with the side effects. So the antidepressants can lead to things like weight gain, and again, there's a balancing side. There's the side effects to taking drugs. So, but again, it comes down to the individual, what the individual wants. Yeah, you're with me, Irene, in terms of frustration with tech issues. So, yes, tech is low value to you. And so I thoroughly recommend you delegate anything related to IT. It's only going to frustrate you, it will make you angry. And I can sense that you probably don't like that feeling of angry and frustration, and leads to other things. It leads to unfulfilling relationships because you take it out on your partner or a loved one, and then they're unhappy, and then you've had a fight, and it's all because you've been doing something of low value and feeling unfulfilled and frustrated, and it drives that emotional center. Okay. um, so I've shared a lot. I mean, there's a whole lot of lifestyle techniques that I could share, but I've actually gone to time by just sharing what you can control around asking better questions. So there isn't, and what I could actually do is I've actually done the other part of this presentation in other webinars that I shared. So what I could do is share the other part, and you could. So this is more the lifestyle part, but I do want to share something with you. If you found this session of value, is that I'd like to share the Resolution Solution Program, a 12-month success program that I'm running this year. So it's starting in February. I've still got the early bird available to the 31st of January. And essentially, the whole purpose of the program is to help you love yourself, help you love others, help you see the world for as it is and be grateful for what's happened, be grateful for events that's happened in your life. So it's essentially going to expand your mind, to elevate your mind by going through. I've shared a part of the DeMartini method tonight. In this course, I'll be facilitating the DeMartini method. So you will learn the DeMartini method, and essentially that DeMartini method is a series of questions to help elevate your thinking and to dissolve emotional charges. And so even the people that you resent in your life, that you have any resentment towards, this process will dissolve that resentment, and you'll be able to put that person that you're resenting, that you don't want to see, that you don't want in your life, you'll be able to put them in your heart by doing this program. So essentially, it dissolves emotional baggage. It enables you the capacity to then go towards your vision. So essentially, in these workshops, well, there'll be quarterly workshops, quarterly half-day workshops. I'll be facilitating them, teaching the methodology, teaching the questioning, helping you to dissolve the baggage and helping you through it and supporting you, as well as we'll be also having sessions around understanding your values, making sure you're setting actions and goals in the areas that are important to you, because there's no point in setting goals in an area that's of low priority to you. So Irene mentioned IT issues. Well, there's no point Irene thinking I must learn computer programming because everyone else is learning computer programming and IT people get paid a lot of money. She's just going to hesitate, frustrate, procrastinate on the study of learning programming because it's not of high value to her. So there's no point of her setting herself a goal is that in 2023, I'm going to learn how to be a computer programmer, because that's not something which she's inspired from within to do. Again, she sees the benefits in doing it, but it's not fulfilling. Her fulfillment comes from other sources. And so I'll help you understand what is truly highly important to you, and then how to set goals. And then there's fortnightly workshop, like fortnightly check-ins, where we're actually making sure you're achieving your goals and making sure there's nothing holding you back from achieving those goals. And so there's a support network in terms of you're doing it with like-minded people. You set the goals in person. We meet in person. I'm also facilitating this in Zoom. So that's going to run in parallel. So there'll be a Zoom running in parallel. There will be a live in person in Sydney, if you're in Sydney. And again, at the end of every workshop, we're then studying another area of health. So it's incorporating all the areas of health and well-being. It's helping with mindset. It's helping essentially dissolve anything that's holding you back, and to enable you to go forward and to be the best version of you. So this is essentially the outline of the program. It starts with pre-work. We start the first facilitation session, the first workshop in February. There'll be another one in May, another one in August, another one in November. And in between each workshop, there's fortnightly Zoom check-ins all throughout the year. So essentially, you'll be held accountable to achieving the goals that you set out to achieve that are higher value to you. And I'll be helping you along the way, making sure that there's nothing in the way, that it's all on the way for you achieving the best 2023. So if this is of interest to you, you can scan this code to register your interest. It's, again, I'm just going to have a session with you to see if it's the right thing for what you're looking for. I don't want anyone doing the course that doesn't want to be there, or I'm not trying to force anyone to go or trying to manipulate them to go. I don't want that. I want people in that room who really, truly want to be there, that want to make a difference, that want to take accountability for their lives, own their lives, be the best version of themselves. That's who I want in the room. And so hence I'm going to be running sort of like a Q&A with you to make sure it's the right fit for what you're looking for, because I just want like-minded people in the room. I want it to be a successful environment. So I'll close with this slide, and it's essentially three techniques that you can also helps you to be in a greater present state of mind. So everything I was sharing tonight helps you have a fulfilled mind, helps you see both sides, have complete awareness and complete objective, assessment of the situation. These are other techniques that can also assist in terms of staying focused, in terms of being the best you can be and letting go of what's just happened. And so, Third Space by Dr. Adam Fraser, he's written a book on this. He studied professional athletes, and he essentially says before you switch tasks, what you want to do is get yourself in the most resourceful state to be in that next frame or into that next situation. So if you're going from the work environment into the home environment, how can you be in the most resourceful and best way in terms of being a father, a mother, a good partner, whoever it is that you're going home to be? How can you be in the best state of mind? So he said, do something that you love, do something that relaxes you before you go and do that next thing. So before you get home, make sure you either go for a swim if that rejuvenates you, go for a walk in the park if that rejuvenates you. That way, when you get home, you're out of your animal part of the brain if you're doing something unfulfilling at work, and you're in that more centered part of the brain, the higher level part of the brain. And so even between meetings, you can do this, or between work calls, you can essentially do things like breathing exercises, get up and walk around, step outside, ring a friend, whatever, or put some music on, whatever's going to shift your state of mind into a more resourceful state of mind, then that's what you want to do in between meetings, in between changing hats from a work hat into your home hat, or whenever that is required. Then, so this can be really helpful. So you can Google Dr. Adam Fraser, Third Space. And the other one is the Pomodoro principle. So again, it's just chunking things down into bite-sized pieces where you do uninterrupted work for 25 to 30 minutes, and then you have a break. Then you do something that's going to, revive you. So it might be getting up, moving around. It might be going to have a glass of water, going to the bathroom, and then coming back and doing another 25 to 30-minute chunk of work uninterrupted. So you're turning off all your devices and you're very focused on that task. And again, it can be a worthwhile technique because you're essentially just not sitting there for a lot of idle time, not really doing anything and just browsing and surfing the web. You're actually just got one screen open, you're just working on that one task, and you remove all disruptions. The Zeigarnik effect is really helpful for someone who has an anxious mind, such as why you've come today. So essentially, the Zeigarnik effect is anything that we don't put closure to, and closure can be just if you've got a task that you haven't completed today that you think, yeah, I need to continue to work on that, writing it down as to something that you need to address tomorrow morning is putting closure to that task, because it's not circulating in your head is, oh, I didn't get that task done, I need to work on that tomorrow. And that will just keep circulating in your head until you close it. And so to close it out, write a to-do list for tomorrow. The things you didn't get done that are really important to get done the next day, put them down, write a list. This puts closure. Again, it's like making sure all the windows are shut or something, or locking the house before you go out. It's just that process that you go through to close any unopened files in your mind so that when you're out and about, you're not thinking, oh, did I close that window? There's a storm coming. Or did I take the washing off the line? You actually have gone through a checklist before you leave the house and putting closure to the things that could be playing on your mind. And so it's called the Zeigarnik effect. Anything that we don't put closure to in our mind will keep replaying and keep repeating and keep coming up and keep occupying time and space in our mind. So in order to put closure to it, we need to delegate it to someone else to do. we need to just dump it and say no or not do it. We need to own it and put it on our task to do tomorrow. Again, it's putting closure to it. It's actually taking some action, whether it be delegating it, dumping it, or doing it the next day. So they're just 3 little tips I wanted to share in addition to what I've shared. Again, if you've really liked the information, then please, you can find me on my podcast. There's a lot more of this information where I share various topics. So you can, again, scan the QR code. It will take you directly to my podcast, which is called Me&My Health Up. Again, it's free. It's, again, holistic health education. And yeah, if you want to follow me on any of the socials where, again, I'm sharing more holistic health education, please, yeah, follow me on any of these channels. If you have any questions, yeah, ask me now. I'm happy to stay on another 5 minutes. And thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate your time, and I really enjoyed sharing the knowledge tonight. So thank you.